We're going to be talking about how aging affects the body and the benefits of physical activity. The areas of the aging process that we'll be focusing on are muscular deterioration, so looking at what triggers the body to start reducing muscle mass as we age, how physical activity will help retain it, and the health benefits of doing so. Secondly, we will look at bone density decline with the primary focus on osteoporosis, those greatest at risk, and how resistance training can improve quality of life. And finally, the benefits of exercise for those with cognitive impairments, specifically dementia, and how the rate of cognitive decline will reduce with increased physical activity.
Muscle loss is an inevitable part of aging with the noticeable decline occurring around 40 years of age. It is important to note that every individual will experience muscle loss at some point within their older years, but it is apparent that severity can vary depending on lifestyle factors such as exercise. Declining muscle is commonly described as sarcopenia. Sarcopenia comes from the Greek language translating into lack of flesh. It's mainly described as the inability for muscles to function and grow properly due to aging. As shown in the picture above, sarcopenia is caused by a change in body composition, where adipose tissue increases, resulting in physical inactivity. Although muscles begin declining in late adulthood, at age 80, an adult will have lost 30% of their overall muscle. Aging muscles take longer to contract as they lose their type 1 and type 2 fibers. This is due to the ATP rate of production being reduced, directly affecting the type 2 or fast twitch fibers. This then can explain why it's tougher for an older adult to keep up with younger individuals. Although it's caused by natural aging, there is a decline within the rate of contraction of those muscles, but it can be improved with regular exercise. Without adequate muscle strength, everyday physical activities such as getting up out of bed or walking unassisted become more complicated, which can directly affect independence. Having inadequate muscle makes an individual more susceptible to an injury, increasing the risk of a fall, which ultimately can lead to physical inactivity. Physical inactivity within adulthood causes negative repercussions in later life. These repercussions can cause the individual to lose 3 to 5% of their overall muscle mass every 10 years after the age of 30. In order for healthy aging in regard to muscle loss, exercise is beneficial for overall muscle size and strength. Exercise is an effective way to improve muscle loss as there is a significant relationship between physical inactivity and the increase of muscle loss. Resistance and balance training have provided significant improvements to sufferers of sarcopenia. Resistance training causes muscles to contract due to external objects such as barbells, which over time improves muscle size and strength. Participating in resistance training 2 to 3 times a week increases the muscle fiber by 10 to 62% within a 9-week time frame. By combining both everyday activities and resistance training together has shown great benefits within older adults. Balance training improves strength within the core, lower limbs, and is needed for equilibrium to decrease the risk of a fall. Between the ages of 65 to 80 years old, the likelihood of a fall increases to the extent that 1 in 2 adults would have experienced a fall by the age of 80. Balance training is more personalized in comparison to resistance training as the individual is using their own body weight to gain proprioception. Tai Chi is an appropriate form of balance training within older adults as it focuses on relaxation and slow movements, contracting the muscles for a prolonged, slower period. Both resistance and balance training should be included when treating those who are affected by sarcopenia, as it will highly benefit them in everyday activities such as getting up out of bed and improving their overall quality of life.
We know that aging has a negative effect on muscle mass, but this is not the only area that begins to decline. One of the most affected parts of our bodies are our bones, with the most common problem being osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is a disease that occurs when bones lose their density, caused by bones losing minerals such as calcium quicker than the body can replace them. Calcium is a major structural element of bones, so any great loss will lead to a reduction in bone density. As bones lose their thickness and density, they become weak and fragile, causing them to become particularly susceptible to fractures. Estrogen and testosterone play a significant part in maintaining bone strength. Women are at a higher risk of developing the disease because of the dramatic decrease in estrogen levels during menopause, which causes bones to lose calcium at a much quicker rate. During the first 5 years of menopause, total bone mass decreases by up to 10%. Men also lose bone density as they age, but unlike estrogen, testosterone levels in men decline gradually, so bone mass remains sufficient until later in life. There are usually no symptoms of the disease, and people may not realize they have osteoporosis until a fracture occurs. Osteoporosis is often referred to as the silent disease because bones quietly break down without any signs. Osteoporosis literally means bones with holes, with the most common areas affected being the hip, spine, and wrist. Osteoporosis is a major issue and people need to take great care as they age. Exercise is one of the most effective methods of preventing osteoporosis. When people exercise, it produces small gains in bone mineral density, improving the overall strength of bones. This is due to new bone formation usually occurring on the surface of bones, where the stresses of exercise are highest. Bone mass is what gives bones their strength, so when osteoporosis is present, it decreases the bone strength rapidly. This means that regular exercise is very important as people age, as it is what increases the mass of bones. Considerable improvements can be seen in bone mass of those who participate in exercise compared to those who are sedentary. Various forms of exercise have been used to improve bone mineral density, and the most valuable types of physical activity in preventing osteoporosis are impact and resistance exercise. Any kind of strength training is directly related to increased bone mineral density and has been proven to be most beneficial. Exercise has maximum effects when the training is done correctly. When exercising to strengthen bones, peak load is much more important than the number of repetitions, so heavy weights lifted a small amount of times is best. The most effective method of exercise for bone growth is achieved when daily physical activity is separated into 2 shorter sessions around 8 hours apart. It is more valuable to increase the number of sessions rather than lengthening the duration of the physical activity. So it is obvious that physical activity works and that exercise is extremely effective in preventing osteoporosis, but the form of the exercise is what makes it so beneficial.
An individual's physical functioning and abilities start to deteriorate as they age. However, I will be discussing the cognitive functioning and impairments that exist, specifically dementia, and how physical activity affects performance. Firstly, the process of cognitive deterioration begins when the hippocampus is no longer able to meet the demand of an individual's cognitive system, and therefore the individual does not respond with as much activity from their temporal lobe structures. Response activity is an umbrella term referring to executive and cognitive functioning, which happen to show the steepest decline with age. The belief is that older individuals who lead physically active lifestyles may be able to alter the rate and the extent of their cognitive decline due to the brain's plasticity. This can be generalized to both those who have and have not been diagnosed with dementia, as found in Drugan and Gulliford's 2013 cohort study. Longitudinal studies have reported that inactive participants are at a significantly greater risk of developing cognitive impairments during their later life, due to relationships between their brain plasticity, social environments, and living habits. Living habits in reference to the intensity of physical activity on a regular basis. Interestingly, Middleton and Barnes have observed that majority of participants who did not partake in physical activity during their youth did not pursue a university education. This is important to note since cognitive activity is the result of an enriched and stimulating environment, much like a university, that creates more dendritic branches and synaptic connections, therefore improving cognition. Results within this field have indicated that participants who are classed as having a high physical activity level typically have a better living situation and quality of life, whereas those classified as inactive face a more rapid cognitive decline that may also aid in depression development due to a poorer quality of life. As found in the Fernandez-Mayoral study, the results table provides a visual comparison between those who are physically active and those who aren't, in terms of their mobility, self-care, pain, general health status, and leisure activities. In regards to the optimum level of physical activity, majority of studies maintain focus on physically intense activities such as jogging or swimming and intellectually demanding activities like reading or studying. However, there have been more recent studies published that have primarily focused on the relationship between everyday physical activities, so things such as housework or gardening, and improvement of cognitive tasks such as memory, fluid and crystallized intelligence, and problem-solving skills. These results support the argument that physical activity of varying intensity levels does help maintain cognitive functions and reduce the rate of decline. However, for further definition, Studies comparing both active and inactive males and females concluded that participation in everyday physical activity was positively correlated with cognitive functions. However, the greatest benefits were obtained via lifelong intense physical activity. This suggests that memory and executive functioning could have specific domains in the cognitive ability, and therefore are directly affected by intense physical activity.
As most of these conditions onset around or after the age of 50, it is extremely important to set a strong foundation by exercising regularly throughout early adulthood and midlife. By doing so, you will help maintain bone density or slow down the rate of decline, which will significantly reduce the chances of developing osteoporosis. Increase or maintain muscle mass, which will help the delay of decline in motor skills, which we use for everyday tasks around the house. The stimulation of the brain caused by exercise will help maintain cognitive function, reducing the chances of developing a condition such as Alzheimer's or dementia. So the sooner you start exercising, the more time you have before you start slowing down.